Hello and welcome to another episode of Vegans and Vegetarians. We are your hosts, Lucy Taylor.
And I forgot my name very briefly there, but it's Victoria Back.
We're off to a flying start
We're off to
already.
A flying start.
I think that sun has done something to my brain tonight.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we were just talking about this. I don't appear to have tanned. We were outside. Figured we well.
No freckle tan in sight.
You can normally tell if I've caught the sun if the backs of my hands go, but there's not much action there.
No. Well, we have just been out making the most of the Scottish summer, which normally lasts for about a week in spring. This year, summer has fallen in the second week of April.
So that means that summer is over and it is the countdown to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
The nights are drawing in and look out the big jacket.
Temperatures are about to dip again.
No, wait for that first frost.
So we have decided to make this week's episode about navigating illness, injury, particularly sort of like chronic illnesses and chronic injuries as well, because it is something that comes up in conversation a lot, not just with clients, but just with people who I've been speaking to a lot on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of overlap and comorbidities between neurodivergent conditions such as autism and ADHD, and then other things like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, chronic fatigue. There's a lot of people that have issues with like PCOS and endometriosis and stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I do just want to preface this by saying that I personally, as far as I'm aware, don't experience any sort of chronic illnesses. What I have dealt with over maybe like the last like 6 or 7 months, when I had a period of quite severe burnout in the latter half of last year, I am still kind of struggling to manage my energy levels. So I have had to very much adapt my training and also like communicate more frequently with my coach about how I am feeling, because I am not physically able to do the same amount of work that I used to be able to when it comes to like training and stuff. So I definitely have some experience with that side of things.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose in terms of myself as well, I also do not suffer from any kind of chronic health conditions and such like, although as Lucy kind of mentioned, we've worked on individual basis with people that have, and I also have a couple of family members that experience some, I would say, fairly debilitating kind of chronic issues. And obviously I know it's not the same, but I had my surgery last year, so I had an intensive period of not being able to do very much or have what I thought of as conventional exercise kind of thrown out, and I had to kind of start from scratch there. So shall we get into it then?
Yeah, I think there is a lot to sort of cover on this topic. And I would say that probably the biggest thing that
Kiwi, special guest.
Kiwi, we're trying to film a podcast.
Do you want to tell everyone?
I would say, like, having worked with clients who have chronic conditions, one of the kind of biggest things I would say is that your progress and like your fitness journey is going to look very different from someone who doesn't deal with these conditions. And I think that social media has made it so easy to compare yourself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're all guilty of it. We're constantly in that comparison trap and comparing ourselves to people who have different life circumstances from us, who have different energy levels, who have completely different like careers, all these different things that are gonna sort of affect the ability.
Shape the way you train.
The ability that you have to progress. And so I would say that like the number one thing is to understand what success looks like to you. And I mean realistically, like be realistic. Like, is success for you simply just managing to train without pain?
Mm-hmm.
Is it being able to train without having any sort of like relapse when it comes to any condition that you're suffering from? Is it literally just getting some form of movement in? Because like there's no point in comparing yourself to someone else who's able-bodied.
Hmm. I think we were actually talking about that earlier when we went our walk about, I mean, slightly different topic, but gyms, I say gyms, fitness environments in general, for the most part, are largely kind of heteronormative,
Mm-hmm.
quite like people fit in boxes. And actually, I ironically remember when my mum came to the gym I used to work at very recently, and she, when I came home at night, she was like, Victoria, do you know, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be like. She was like, there were so many, like, and I don't use this phrase in a disparaging way, but she was like, there were so many other unfit people there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what did you think you were going to find when you went to the gym? Like, of course there would be people of different fitness abilities and levels there. Like,
Yeah.
that's why people are in there. I think, like you said about social media, there's this kind of perception that it's full of people that look and move like Olympic athletes.
Yeah.
Like, not a blemish on their skin, perfectly proportioned, good looking people that eat perfectly and live perfectly every day. And it's not like that. Like, life isn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's, I say to my clients all the time, like, there's a million ways to gym.
Yeah.
But that doesn't just apply to training methods, that can also apply to goals.
Absolutely.
Like, I think you had a similar conversation with a client today as well, but if your goals are one way or the other, that obviously impacts how it's going to look.
Yep. And I think like the other thing to add to that as well is with social media and with the comparison game, there are a lot of coaches out there as well who maybe don't take into consideration your limitations. I think, things like this. I looked into this before because one of my clients was actually asking me about it. So, like, why the 10,000 steps? And do you know, it actually
Apparently,
came
it's a myth,
about.
isn't it? It was just a
It's a,
pedometer
yeah,
company.
it was a Japanese pedometer company. And apparently, like, the Japanese, for like, I don't know if it was like the name of the company or something. It was like a little, what the walking man symbol that they use is also like the Japanese number for like 10 or like
Oh,
symbol for 10 or something like that. So they decided that it was going to be like 10k steps.
and
So
it
it was
turns out
just
it's
this
actually quite a
random,
good
like,
suggestion.
it is a good suggestion because I think it gives you that sort of baseline to work towards. But when I think of some of the people that I work with, for example, like take someone who is like morbidly obese and gets really exhausted from maybe even doing 6,000 steps, like you're not going to start them off on 10k steps right away because, like, on the day that they maybe don't manage to achieve that or they don't have the energy levels for that, if they've got like an all or nothing mindset, then
Like, you
they're
would write
you're
off your
setting them up for failure.
full day.
And it's also like the stress that can be put on their joints as well. And then, for example, if you've got something like endometriosis or any other sort of chronic illness that like the pain can be excruciating, you're gonna have periods where your illness flares up, and you can't like expect the same of yourself during those periods that you do on a good week.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, it's actually funny you say that because quite, no, I wouldn't say quite soon after, because there was the initial period after my operation, I really was on my bum. But when I started to go to the physio, I mentioned something to her, and I was still on crutches at this point.
Mm.
So even the steps I were taking were not steps I was doing on unsupported. And I mentioned to her something about, I can't remember the number, but it wasn't 10 because like I wasn't moving that far that fast. But I mentioned something about my step count. And I went, oh, my step count's gone up this week. And I'm pretty sure if she could have hit me with a crutch, she would have. She was like, you need to stop with the step count.
Yeah.
Because I did say, I think in the same breath, I said to her, oh, my step count's going up, but my knee's really sore.
Mm-hmm.
And she went, your knee's really sore because you've put all this extra load through it.
Yeah.
Now, on the one hand, obviously the further along in my recovery journey I went, it obviously was like a bit uncomfortable because I was doing things I'd done on my leg or hadn't done on my leg for months. But in that very like initial period, it was sore because I was doing far too much on it. Like, I'd
Yeah.
grossly overstressed it and it was looping, and that was why. And I remember the physio at the time saying to me, she was like, do not look at your watch. She was like, we're not at the step count stage. But I suppose the logic does apply that, like you're saying, if for whatever reason something in your life prevents you from 10, Because like we're saying, it's a number made up by a company. If something presents you from 10, be it health or like a flare up of something, then it's just a day where you're not doing 10. You're not doing yourself justice. You're listening to your body and going, my body can't do this right now. Because see, if you did do the 10 and then flared, not even obviously, I would just use my knees as an example, but if, say, for example, chronic fatigue, if you're like, no, I must hit my 10 steps, you've probably had a knock on impact into your next day.
Yeah.
And you've probably caused issues for yourself down the line because you've not allowed your body time to rest.
Absolutely. I think like another thing that I definitely want to touch on as well that has come up in conversations with people, but like people have also gotten in arguments with me over this before, which is so ridiculous. But right, but especially within like the plant-based community, there's this whole argument of like processed foods are bad for you, and like I do understand it to an extent, right? There is this movement of like anti-processed foods, and okay, they're maybe not amazing for your health, but I think that it's an extremely sort of ableist view to take, where you're like everything must be like completely clean and unprocessed, because say you are disabled and you're having a flare up, or say you suffer, sorry, I don't want to use the word suffer, but say you are autistic and you're suffering with burnout, or you have ADHD and you're suffering with burnout, the goal, I would say, in those situations is to make things as simple for you as you possibly can, whilst still actively doing something towards your goals. Mm-hmm. So if that means eating microwave rice instead of cooking your rice fresh, then go for it. Like,
who doesn't eat microwave rice?
You're still getting the nutrients from it. Similarly, if you find it easier to rely solely on things like protein powder and like easy protein sources like soya chunks, just stick them in the air fryer and whatnot.
I quite like soya chunks.
I mean, they are just a classic part of my diet anyway, but I think like particularly if you're going through some sort of flare out or some sort of period of burnout, the goal is to make things as easy for you as possible. So if that means opting for slightly more processed food, and opting for things that are easy to cook but still somewhat nutrient dense, then that's going to be a lot more beneficial for you than like just ordering loads of takeaway and stuff. Mm-hmm. So
I remember, I mean, it's quite a small thing, but it kind of ties in with what you're saying. I remember seeing a thing from a PT on Instagram years ago, and it was just a tip he had. He was like, when you've done your dishes and you put the shaker back in the drawer, he'd put like, fill it up with protein and put it in the drawer. All of them. So if you've got 5 shakers, all 5 of them have the powder sitting in them.
Yeah.
With the exact amount you're after. And that way, at the time, his argument was, oh, it's easy if you're in a rush.
Mm-hmm.
But if your health is liable to go up and down, and there's a day you're really struggling to even feed yourself, getting the tub out and scooping, whereas if you've just got shakers in the cupboard that are full and ready to go, boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
all you need to do is lift the shaker and put milk or whatever you're having in it. Like, it's like you're saying, make things as in line with what works for you.
Yeah.
Just because this fitfluencer on Instagram is up at like 4:30 or whatever, doing cartwheels and and all the rest of it, doesn't mean there's anything wrong if you get up in the morning and you cannot get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are many of us in the health and fitness industry and the health and fitness community that there will be more people struggling to get out of their bed in the morning than not.
Yeah.
We are not all jumping out of bed and doing 50 push-ups and then getting on with our day. It's just not the way.
Yeah.
It's not the way it works.
I think like another thing that I implement with my clients that has been really helpful, particularly for those who maybe do struggle with energy levels or who are neurodivergent and during periods of overwhelm they really struggle to manage any sort of consistency. So one of the things that I teach or like implement within my coaching program is the gear system. Now if anyone wants a full rundown of how this actually works, then please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I am tailormadetraining.pt. Please feel free to reach out to me and I can kind of talk you through it. But
you can also talk to me and I'll give you my 2 cents. I don't do the gear system.
With the gear system though, so there are 5 gears. So if you think about it as a car, I mean, I know that everyone drives a fucking automatic these days, but I still drive manual.
You real drive.
So if you're an OG and if you still drive a manual obviously your car has 5 gears. So if we imagine gear one being like you're literally just trundling along at a slow and steady pace, doing the bare minimum, we've then got gear five. So imagine yourself cruising along a motorway, like there's no traffic, there's no issues with the roads, like you're not getting stopped by any red lights. You're just cruising through. So that's your gear five. So gear one is basically doing the bare minimum. It would literally just be a case of focusing on a couple of areas. So it could be like just getting some form of movement in. It could be just eating mindfully, making sure that you're maybe getting a couple of high protein meals in, or like having a bit of fruit. Um, Gear one should be like literally like making things as easy and manageable as possible for you. We have then got gear five, so that's going to be like your, we sometimes refer to it as like the power week within my program. So your power week is like when you're your best self, like you're absolutely smashing everything, you're at the gym,
you're not
got all your
hormonal.
sessions in, you're not hormonal, you're really strong, you are hitting loads of PBs, you're over and above your steps, like your eating is absolutely on point, you feel really good, you're making time to socialize with people, you're just having the best week that you possibly could. So then the remaining 3 gears in between are going to be like a slight step up. So obviously gear two will be better than gear one and so on. And basically, the way that things work is when my clients check in on a weekly basis, if we are implementing the gear system, then they will let me know what gear they're in for that week. And then they get thinking about what they feel is going to be realistically manageable for them that week. And what that does is it really helps to kind of move away from that black or white thinking as well, which is very, very common, especially in neurodivergent people. So that kind of all or nothing, like if I can't do it perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. Now, what I have found with some of my clients though is that gear one, they're like, I need to be a minimum of gear three, and I'm like, no, gear one exists for a reason. So like, if we need to use, if we need to use gear one, like we are using gear one. Like the point is that you're still building some momentum, and so I think that is a really helpful way to approach things when it comes to any sort of chronic illness and disability as well, because if your energy levels fluctuate on a weekly basis, like if your physical ability, like your mood, all these other things fluctuate on a daily, weekly basis, then it means that there are always like a couple of areas that you can focus on, and you can still feel some sense of accomplishment even if you're having the week from hell.
Like that puts me in mind of, so my sister, shout out to Lauren, suffers from ME, so chronic fatigue, and she actually always said to me, like she doesn't even say it in relation to herself, she'll always say it to me if I'm having a wobble or something. And the way Lauren puts it is, say for example, you're having a day where you can only give 50%. That 50%
is your 100.
Is your 100%. Yeah. So it might look like you're saying with your clients, like it might look differently to what you'd maybe planned, but you've given it everything. Like we've had the kind of chat before about, like sometimes we'll have a day where like one of us is maybe a bit stressed and it's like, oh, I hope it probably doesn't make me sound lazy. And it was like, it's not lazy if you're giving it everything you're able to give.
I hate the way that this word lazy is thrown around,
if it's not perfect,
especially like by coaches, and it's always like kind of shaming the client as well. And one of the reasons I have a huge issue with this is because, like, as a coach, it's not up to us to decide what's a reason and what's an excuse. Like at the end of the day, it's always the client that has to take responsibility either way. So of course, if I'm noticing patterns in a client, then I will challenge them on that. But at the end of the day, like if you genuinely, like physically, are not capable of doing everything that you are supposed to be doing, or that you feel you should be doing, like that's not an excuse, and that's not lazy. It's simply just that you don't have the spoons to do it.
Because I suppose as well that, like you're saying, not even from a coaching perspective, but who are other people to decide whether you've given it your all? Fair enough, as coaches, we are like, our job is to try and encourage, but it's certainly not to judge. Because at the end of the day, like say for example, like you're, like examples aside, say for example someone out there is just out and out not following their program, not paying attention, like completely switched off. That's completely different to someone waking up and thinking, I can't do this today, or I don't have the energy to even put shoes on, or like I've not slept at all night, or I'm incredibly down, or like it's not for anyone else to tell you how many spoons you've got left. You yourself will know like how many spoons you've got left, but your coaches should, if you've got a good one, they should be encouraging. They shouldn't be twisting your arm and guilt tripping you into success, because that success will not taste sweet when you're at the top if you've had your arse kicked the full road up the hill and been dragged up there where no thought's been given. Real health and wellness comes from taking yourself as you are and nurturing yourself there, and sometimes that means meeting yourself where you are, and it might not necessarily be a place you're comfortable with, but that's okay. Like, no one's health is perfect all the time, and I dare say it's even harder for people with chronic conditions. One of my clients, I'll retract her name, I'll not mention it, but I'm very proud of her. I've worked with her for just over a year. We met each other for the first time maybe about 3 weeks before my operation, and we'd had a couple of sessions in. And when you work with clients initially, there's no real client-trainer relationship there. You're just kind of feeling each other out. And I obviously then went off sick for a prolonged period of time, but it just so happened on the exact same day I went to hospital, so did she, because she suffers from quite a severe respiratory condition. And obviously it took me a while to get back to work, and it took herself a while to recover enough to come back to the gym. But when both were fit, we returned to the gym, and I've worked with her since, and there have been a good few flare-ups in that time, some of which did result in other hospital admissions. But like each time she has bounced back with like steely determination. She's got goals one day. She's got goals, and like she's focused on them. But like some of the time, like you can hear it in her chest, you can hear her rattling. Some days she's absolutely gubbed, but she does what she can. And I remember saying to her at the time, so obviously she has her goals that she's come to me going, I'd like to achieve this. But my goal for her as her trainer was to lengthen the spells between hospital admissions. So I said to her, right, if it's coming, let it come. But what we want to do is every time it rears its head up, we'll try and get you into a state of physical health where if you're going to have to go into hospital, it's for a shorter period of time, or there's longer periods of time between hospital admissions. And the last time she had a flare-up was a couple of months ago. And yes, she was very sick, but she did not go to hospital. And that for me as a trainer, I'm like,
that is
the wheels are moving.
Yeah, that
the wheels
is
are moving. She herself at the time, she's like, oh, I didn't achieve the other things I set out to. Like, she wants to start powerlifting, and she's like, well, I never achieved any of that this year. And I'm like, but you've not been in hospital. And that is a huge win. I hope she's listening, because I'm very proud. As a trainer, I would say that's probably one of the highlights of my career, is that one instance she did not go to hospital because she did not need to. Yes, I will not take it away. She was very sick. But in terms of how that used to go, that used to result in a hospital admission.
It looks different now.
It looks different now. And that to me, I think is amazing.
That is, yeah.
I think...
No, that's honestly amazing. And I think that does just kind of relate back to, I think it was the initial point I made about how if you are suffering from a chronic condition, then like you have to define what your version of success looks like, but be realistic about it. Like, don't go, I mean, I think it's good to have big goals to set for, but like don't go setting goals that are so crazy that like they end up just feeling completely unachievable.
Don't shoot a cannon out of a canoe.
That's what Vaughn always says to me around taking deloads when I'm like, I don't want to take time away from the gym.
I wish you could get a sign on a deload week that says this is not what I normally live.
Yeah, but I think that it is so important to kind of be realistic and even just like have a think about like what is the next step, like what is a step up from where I'm at right now. So especially if you've maybe like taken a bit of a backslide and you've actually had to take some time away from the gym because you've been struggling quite badly, can you just make a habit of getting to the gym once a week, like on a set day, and building up from there? Because I think that after a period of time away, like the hardest part is always kind of restarting. And if, especially if you're like dealing with some sort of like chronic illness or disability that has a tendency to flare up, then you're kind of going to go through those periods like more frequently than not, or more frequently than the average person. And so it's just making sure that those small goals that you set are achievable and that you can start building up momentum rather than trying to do too much too soon, which I think is also very common within us neurospicy folks.
Yeah,
so.
and the seagulls outside agree.
Yeah.
Like we talk about quite a lot. It was something I learned when I spoke to my psychologist, and obviously when we started seeing each other, like it came up in conversation, and we use it with each other when we talk about random things, like when we've talked about it, we talk about big things, about towards moves and away moves.
Yeah.
And like generally speaking, in terms of measuring success, the way I learned it was, so a towards move is any step, however big or small, that takes you even so much as a nudge closer to whatever version of success. An away move is something that would take you further away. So this doesn't even just apply to illness or health. This can apply to anything. This can apply to, like, we had the laugh earlier when we were making our dinner and we opened the cupboard and we're like, will we have fratellas while we're waiting on the pasta to cook? I mean, we had a debate in the supermarket about the chocolate as well, and we were like, is this in line with our goals? Will it get us where we need to go? And we're like, maybe not tonight, maybe we'll get the chocolate money another time. But like the aim, I normally say to my clients, the aim of the game is to end the day with more towards moves than away moves.
Yeah.
But sometimes like a towards move can literally be something as small as remember to take your medicine when you get up.
Yeah.
Or if you struggle to get into routine with these things, maybe have like a reminder set on your phone, or if you live with someone, get them to take like that, like in the morning, if you're like having a cup of coffee or something, just get your partner or your mum or your dad or a friend to just go, just checking you've had your medication. Or physiotherapy, like I had an alarm set on my phone when I did my physio. I set an alarm on my clients, on my app, all my clients have the programs on. I set a reminder for one of my clients to do our physio. My papa's currently in hospital and that's what he was doing the other night when you went in. That's why he had his arms in the air, because he's to control the arm on the way back.
Okay.
But like it like built into routine. Like those might not be big things. Like it might not be like a big killer bench session.
Yeah.
But those tiny wee like marginal gains get you that wee bit closer.
I suppose that was like, I'm forgetting actually that like I had to recently like re-acclimatise to being back at the gym again. I spoke about this a little bit on Instagram at the time, but I started on antidepressants again. I made the decision to do that back in February, after a rough couple of months. And I dealt with like quite bad side effects when I first started this medication. So there was a good couple of weeks where I could not leave the house. And I look back on it now and I'm like, that was such a blur. Like, I was not me. I was basically just a zombie for a couple of weeks, and Lord knows how I made it through work, how I managed to like keep myself alive for those few weeks. Although I had your support, but like I think it was about a month off the gym. And when I decided to get back to it, I had that conversation with my coach. I was like, I don't want to like jump into too many things at once because I don't want to risk burning myself out again. And for me, it was very much a case of like, just go in, like literally just physically get to the gym. Just focus on doing compound movements. Don't worry about the accessory work at the end. Something is better than nothing. And my clients are probably sick of hearing me say something's better than nothing, but that's something that again, like I like to preach because, yeah, I deal with all or nothing people on a daily basis, and I would like to remind everyone that all or nothing is not a personality trait. It is simply just a mindset, and you can absolutely overcome it.
Yep.
It is all about the beliefs we hold about ourselves, and you can rewire your brain. Hit us up if you want to know more about that. But
hit us up if you want to know about how we rewire brains for a living.
But yeah, I think it is, as I say, it's just managing your expectations of yourself, and not expecting yourself to be able to run at 100% if you are having a flare up or if you are going through a period where you're not feeling 100%.
I think there really is something about like meet yourself where you are.
Yep.
Like obviously we kind of said at the start, like there's so much, especially with social media and that nowadays, where it has to be perfect or it has to look a certain way. It does not have to look like anything. I went golfing with one of my clients last week, and I'm not as good at it as I thought I would be. They weren't pretty, but as she mentioned, she was like, "It doesn't see if it goes in the hole. It doesn't need to look pretty." Like,
Oh,
and I meant
no.
that in,
Oh,
the,
no.
in the cleanest possible way.
Oh,
But
no.
like, see if you got results.
Yeah.
Does it matter if you did not have the selfie lighting and the squat rack, and like you showed up in the same hoodie you've been wearing all week because you've not had the energy to put a washing on, or like you still showed up for yourself in whatever way that looked. And just because other people might not understand it, because I think that's the other thing, other people are very quick to look at others and obviously judge them. But I think it goes like everybody's granny probably always says it. It's like, you've never walked a mile in their shoes, don't you judge them?
I think another thing that I wanted to touch on as well, because I feel as if, like, coming back to, like, you know, beliefs that we hold about ourselves and self-limiting belief, I've come across people who maybe feel like they are, like, too chronically ill, or, like, they feel as if they're not healthy enough to, like, work with a coach as well. And well, I think, like, yeah, okay, there probably are going to be instances where maybe you are going through, like, a bit too rough of a period where working with someone and committing to your goals isn't exactly a priority, especially if, for example, your illness is affecting you to the point where you can't physically work. Then obviously, like, having a coach is a financial investment, and it's maybe not a priority for you. But I think it's also important to understand that, again, like, as we have kind of touched on, your, like, coach should be able to meet you where you're at. And sometimes it's about kind of like finding an approach that works for you and having someone just to kind of bounce those ideas off of and to kind of help you set goals that are realistic for you where you're at this point in time, and kind of push you in those periods where you maybe do have more energy and you do feel physically well, so that you are really maximising your progress during those periods, and then you're not being too hard on yourself and you're looking after your mindset and you're focusing on controlling the things that, or influencing the things that are within your circle of influence. I don't like using the word control, because I think that if you are going through a period where everything feels out of control, then being told to control the controllables isn't particularly helpful.
Nothing is predictable anymore.
No. So it's more about kind of focusing on the things that you are able to influence, and mindset is a big one there. And again, just kind of reflecting back on, am I doing more for myself at the moment than I maybe would have been doing in the past when I had a flare up? Again, this is where it can be helpful having a coach or someone to kind of guide you.
I think there probably is, when you're talking about coaching, there's an element of that of coaches and PTs are not what they used to be. And it's not the old cartoon of like the high school basketball coach or the drill sergeant. Like, and you kind of said it earlier about like, well, I'm not in a place. Obviously, life circumstances have a knock on, but people often kind of, they've said to me before, I dare say you've had it or any other coach or trainer's had it, it's like, I'm not physically fit enough to have a coach right now.
Yeah.
But as you said, coaches meet you where you are, and
or a good coach will meet you where you are.
A good coach will meet you where you are. And there's so much in it, and that, like, your coach does more than slap weights on the bar. There's the encouragement factor, there's the knowledge. So if you don't know where to start, a coach is the perfect place to start, because your coach will tell you where to start.
Yep.
And show you how to progress up from there. And we were saying earlier this morning that I eventually hit a point, like, yes, it's nice to have a coach, like we both have coaches ourselves, but over time you will start to understand your own body and your own goals and your own training to such an extent that we like to think that one day our clients will turn and go, I actually don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
But you're there for the encouragement and the accountability factor, as well as the knowledge. So you don't necessarily need to be in tip-top physical condition to be like the right fit for a coach.
I think you just need to be open to like experimenting
Mm-hmm.
and communicating with your coach about what is and isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't like that communication aspect. That's something that's built up over time as well, because like if your coach is expecting you to communicate straight off the bat without actually building that trust up with you, then that's a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah.
These things come
Tell
with
me
time.
about your life, all of it.
Like I know that I'm not telling my coach shit until I know that I can trust them. But
Mm-hmm. And even at that, like, make sure you are heard by your coach.
mm-hmm.
I suppose the way the way I think on it is like everyone's journey is completely different, and some people, through no fault of their own, have like extra things to consider
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like any kind of training journey or goals. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way to approach it, other than to just listen to your body and how you feel about a given situation. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. And if something feels right, it's probably right.
Yeah. I think obviously like the kind of main theme that's come up throughout this is like just getting clear on what your version of success looks like,
Mhm.
and how do you kind of manage that on a weekly basis. Is it implementing something similar to the gear system that we touched on? Is it like kind of defining your metrics that you measure your success by on a weekly basis? Like what do you feel makes a successful week when you're having a flare up versus when you are in good health?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can you be as realistic as possible in terms of the expectations that you have of yourself, depending on what kind of phase you're in at any point in time?
Mm-hmm. Success looks different on everyone.
Yeah, particularly if you have a chronic illness or disability. But I think that kind of sums things up. I don't feel like I have too much left to add to that.
No, neither do I.
No.
Yeah.
If you do want to kind of delve into anything further, then obviously you can hit us up on Instagram and we can have a chat. As always, my handle is tailormadetraining.pt.
And mine is VB the PT.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast episode. As always, if you've got any sort of suggestions for topics you'd like covered in future, then please give us a shout as well.
Peace!
Peace.